Morning, everyone. So my name is Gaith. I lead the design team here at Claris. So this is the agenda. So we're going to go through a few things here today. First is I'll talk about the role of design and why it's important and how design is related to product development and product management and the value that it brings to an organization. And then I'll do a deep dive into the Claris design team, what we do, the different roles that we have, the processes that we use every day. And then I'll talk a bit about design thinking workshop. And the idea there is, well, if you don't have a team of 10 designers, how can you run a design thinking workshop and get the value of design in a much smaller setup? And then I'm going to share a bit of resources, a few books that can lead you down that way, and they'll be very useful. And then if we have time, we'll do some Q&A. Awesome. So let's start. So I'm going to take you back to 1991. I was 16 back then, and I'm originally from Jordan. So that's 7,200 miles east. Somewhere. So back then, I was 16. I was in my high school, and for the first time, I see a Mac, and I'm like, oh my God, I want this thing. I saw it at a friend's house. Went back to my parents, and I said, I want a Mac, and they're like, what's a computer? What does it do? Why do you need it? There's nothing, right? There's no internet. There's nothing. And at school, I was a C and a D student all the way across, except for art. And in art, I was an A student. So I'm like, maybe this is an art thing that I can, use. So somehow I convinced my parents to get me my first Mac. I think I've had 100 Macs by now, but this was my very first Mac, Mac Classic. I don't know how I convinced them, but my brother reminded me the other day. I actually went to the Apple reseller and said, I want that Mac, and it was so expensive, and I worked out a kind of a payment plan for like 10 months, so installments over 10 months to get this thing. But I think this is the best investment that my parents did ever for me, and I'll tell you why. Because the very first thing that was on this thing was Adobe Illustrator 2, right? So the very first time, I'm like, what, there's a thing? There's a digital thing that instead of drawing by hand, I can do it on the computer. That was mind-blowing, right, for me. And so the first summer, I was actually designing logos. So I tried to recreate the Apple logo and kind of learning design and digital design and what the whole thing is. And 25, 30 years later, I'm still using Adobe Illustrator. So fantastic. But the other thing that was awesome on that thing was FileMaker Pro 2, right? Eric here asked me, how did I get FileMaker Pro in 1991 on the Mac? I said, no comment. I don't know how it showed up, but it was there. So I spent the summer trying to create a database for everything in the house, like the recipe books, the phone book, list of my toys, like everything. I'm like, wait, visual database, mind-blowing. So that's my connection to FileMaker, really. It goes a long, long way back. So I'm so proud to be here now, leading the design team at Claris and FileMaker, but that's kind of my origin story that I wanted to share. So fast forward. So now I'm at Claris. I'm not going to go through all of this, but I think there are two things that are interesting in my journey. I co-founded a design agency and ran it for a long time, and then I did a game design studio, ran it for a long time, but we ran it on FileMaker Bento, which was kind of awesome. Yeah, I loved that thing. The experience was awesome. It was very powerful. It was ahead of its time, and I really enjoyed it. But the other thing I want to talk about today, and kind of getting into the meat of the matter, is at SAP, the chief design officer back then was asking, well, what's the value of design, right? In a large corporation like SAP, we're building cloud software, and the question was always, well, what's the role of design? What do we bring? Can you quantify design and its impact on business? So I did a a research paper. So I got this published and peer-reviewed in the Design Management Institute. I'm not going to go through it, of course, today. This is a very long, but you can find it online. It's about 50 pages long, and it talks about the value of design. But I want to talk about two things that were interesting. So one thing, just to share a story, we actually went and did interviews with our top customers. So one of our top customers was Coca-Cola of South America. And they had just renewed a multi-million-dollar deal with SAP to renew for another 3 years, cloud software. We met with the team and we said, can you give us 3 reasons why you chose SAP over the many other options that you have? And they gave us a list of things. And one of them was, your software has the least amount of clicks to get something done. Like that was kind of one of the main reasons why they purchased the software. And when I asked them why, they're like, okay, so you have a fleet of truck drivers that drive around. I mean, the example they gave me was Mexico City, and a truck driver with a lot of Coca-Cola products in his truck has to go and visit 20 shops, and then he has to get off, get in, talk to the owner of the shop. What do you want? And he says, oh, I need X amount of product. Go back in the truck, get the product, give it to him, issue an invoice, and go off to the next place, right? That's his job. And our software was running on that phone, right? So to Coca-Cola, number of clicks to get that thing done was very, very valuable, right? They can measure the number of clicks it takes to get an order done equals money, equals time, equals profit. So they had a value on the number of clicks. Our software did it the fastest way, the least amount of clicks. And then I came back to management and said, who in this building is in charge of number of clicks to get something done? And that's the design team. So the UX designer, one of his main things is what's the information architecture, what's the flow, and how can we get something done the easiest, quickest way possible? And that's one way where we can quantify the value of design, right? How can we link design activities to top-line revenue? So that was one example. We did this with many other customers, and we got to a value. It was about 20%, just to get everybody. But the next thing I want to talk about is this triad that we came up with. And this triad is when you build software, you have product management, you have design, and you have engineering, right? So these 3 show up every time you want to build anything, right? So here's an exercise. What if we take out design, right? What if we're building something and you have only engineers and product managers in the room? What comes out? What's the result? I think the result is you're going to get a feature-rich product, but it's going to be offensive. It's not going to be aesthetically pleasing. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be whatever the engineer thought was the best way to do it that everybody else in the world doesn't understand. I find it offensive, right? It's not delightful to use. I can list a long list of things that fall into that bucket, right? We don't want software like that. We want to reduce software like that. But let's do this. Let's take out engineering. So if you have design and product management, and they're building a software, what would it be? It's probably a Keynote, right? Vaporware, right? It's not going to be a real product, but it's going to be awesome, but it doesn't work, right? So that doesn't work. Well, why do we have engineering and design in a room? It'd be delightful, be awesome experience. It does what it's supposed to do, but there's no market fit, right? We can't sell this thing. We don't know what the market needs. We don't understand what's required. So we're kind of building in a vacuum of what we think is best, but we can't link it to business. We can't link it to revenue. So we need all 3. And the question is, how do you get to a sweet spot? Right? How do you get all these 3 to work together so that everyone compromises a bit to get somewhere in the sweet spot? So what we did at SAP is we did this exercise every quarter and would say, okay, this feature, this product, where does it fit we just released a new product or a version or an update. Where does it land in our triad there, right? We have ways to measure this, and you can find me after and we can talk about this. But that's one way that we kept an eye on how do we keep the product development process like in sync, balanced, where everyone is getting what they want and everyone is not getting what they want in a way, and everybody's compromising to find the right solution in the middle. All right, so I'm going to switch gears now and talk about our design team, because everything that we just talked about, we're trying to implement here at Claris, right? So that design team and that triad, we're trying to live it every day, right? So I'm going to talk a bit about the design team. So I lead 2 design teams, right, at Claris. So we have the marketing design team and the product design team. And one way to think about this is to say the marketing team is all the experience that you do before you log in, and the product design team is the experience that you get after you log in, right? That's one way to look at it. So marketing team, design team tells a story, gets you hooked, gets you in, and then the product design team is what you do inside the product. I'll quickly go over what the marketing team does, design team. We support the go-to-market and marketing function. This is a list of stuff that we do. So very quickly, we're in charge of the brand, the visual, how things look and feel, just from a pure brand perspective. So these are some examples. We have a design system. We have what fonts you use, what colors we use. Our biggest thing, of course, is our website. You know, how does it look? How does it feel? What's on that thing, and how are we translating the requirements of the marketing and sales and go-to-market teams into visual brand, right? Also, other properties that, I mean, everything basically, everything that you see from Claris should be done by the design team on brand, right? So these are just some examples of what we do, including Engage, right? So every year when we do the Engage branding, it's kind of a sub-brand of our main brand, and everything there is done by the marketing team, right? These are just some emails, some social media stuff. So now let's switch over to the product design team, so the second team. The second team works with our PMs and engineering to support these 3 main products that we have. And what we do mostly is, well, here's an example. Does anyone know what this is? This is a flow diagram, right? This is a user flow. This is start. It says, I know this is tiny, but this is start. And this is kind of, the red is what you want to do as a user. And this is the path that you as a user should be taking in our product to get something done, right? So these flows is what the design team works on. And then we apply a design system on these. So think about user interactions and design systems to visualize the flow that we just talked about. A bit more details, we worry about breakpoints. We worry about how large screens are, and how does the design get affected by the screen that you're watching. And the design specs, of course, we'll go into this in depth in a minute. This is a design system that we maintain with fonts and everything like that. I mean, this is an example of, you look at a button or you look at a drop-down menu and you're like, oh, it's a drop-down menu, but there's actually, 5, 6, 7, 8 states for that one item. How does it look when it's disabled? How does it look when it's active? How does it look when there's an error state? All the stuff that needs to be thought out and designed in spec to the pixel, right? Just another example of how buttons would look like. So let's dive a bit deeper. So let's double click into that. So the product design team is 2 main roles, right, that we have. First one, different people call it different things. So you might hear user experience designer, you might hear UX designer, you might hear product design. I mean, there's different ways. I'm not too hung on what we call it. But really, what they're responsible for is intuitive interactions and the flow that we just talked about. Basically, I was explaining this to my daughter last week. I'm like, UX designer is, how do you get to a page? how do you get out of the page, and how does stuff look like in terms of positions and where things are on a page. I mean, if I really simplify it, that's what a UX designer is, right? How do you get to a page? How do you get out? And information architecture is what we call it. Where are things laid out on that page? A visual designer is, once you're on that page, how does it look like? So here we're talking about color, typography, padding, spacing, shadows, like the details of the aesthetics of that thing. So very separate roles. There's a lot of overlap, but really I can say we have two distinct roles. The visual designer, some people call it user interface, some people call it UI, visual design, whatever you call it, but that's the idea. An example would be, if you're building a house, the UX designer is the person that decides where the kitchen is, or where the room is, or where do you put the bathroom? Is it in the kitchen? Or like how is this whole thing coming together? If I want to do something in the house, where do I walk? How do I walk? And where are things laid out in the house? The visual designer is the interior designer, the aesthetics. You know, what's the color of the wall? What couch should we get, and how things look? When you get both of these together, you get hopefully a nice place to stay that makes sense, that when you walk through it, you're delighted, it makes sense, and it looks nice, right? So that's the relationship between these two roles. Let's dive a bit deeper. So what's the process? So the first thing that we do is find what the problems, what is it that we want to solve with this new feature that's coming, right? So here we're talking with PMs. We're trying to understand what the business wants, what the user wants. What is this thing that you're asking us to design? So I'm not going to run through all of these, but the idea is trying to understand the background, trying to understand what we're trying to do. That's always step one. Step two is, now we understand that, now we start doing the UX of it, right? How does stuff lay out on a screen, and how do screens relate to each other, right? And then we start, once we have understanding of that, the next thing we do is we start wireframing. Wireframing is basically, you can use whatever you want in wireframing. The tool doesn't really matter. It could be sketches, it could be sticky notes, it could be whatever it is. But the idea is, you just have boxes that say, okay, this is a button, and it goes over there, and this is a banner, for example, and this is a drop-down menu. You don't have to do anything more than that. And then a prototype is just putting all of those together very quickly, so you're able to click through it and then get a sense of what this thing is that we're just talking about. So understanding the problem, organizing it, and then creating what we call low-fi, low-fidelity designs, meaning they're quick. So if we have any mistakes, we want to change anything, it's not very costly. We change as much as we want. Through all of this, we're testing with users and we're iterating. I mean, that's a given in every stage. And then once all that is good, the next would be the visual designer coming in. We have a design system which makes life easier, meaning that when we have a button, we don't design it every single time. It's already designed from the design perspective, and it has a counterpart in engineering. So we say, okay, use this UI element, and it shows up correctly in engineering as well as in design. And then, of course, we hand off to engineering, and then we iterate again from there, right? So we give them feedback, we test what they do, anything that's wrong or missing, we fix that. So that's very high level. Here are the tools that we use, right? So first one is Miro. We use Miro, but you can use whatever whiteboarding software that you want. So Miro is just a brainstorming tool that we use. You open up, it's basically a big, huge canvas, and you can just throw anything on it. It's very helpful to brainstorm, right? We use Miro, but you can use whatever you want. Here, we're figuring out with PMs what the user persona is, like who's this targeting. We're researching that there. We're creating very high-level user journeys of the steps that the user needs to take to accomplish what they're doing. And some IA means information architecture, so just in general, at the very high level, what are we doing here in terms of screen? The next one is Sketch. So Sketch is a design software. So now we're getting, professional design software. That's the next step. Once we agree over here with, because anybody can access Miro, but Sketch gets a bit more advanced, right? So now we're opening up the design software, creating wireframes, prototypes, and then the final pixel polish is all happening inside Sketch, right? Once that's done, we use GitHub to communicate with engineering. So from Sketch outputs a clickable prototype. Then we can push through. Gitkracking is the software that connects to GitHub. And then engineering can go and click through our design spec. So we don't want them messing around in Sketch. So we create, and I'll show you an example of what that looks like. And they can look at that. So these are the tools that we use. So that's the process, and these are the tools. Here's an example. So I'm going to show you two examples about product design. So about UX. This is the calculation, work script and calculation window in FileMaker, right? Like in the keynote, we talked about this. This is peppered throughout FileMaker, and a lot of developers see this on a daily basis. This is how it is in product today. So the requirement that came from PM is, well, we want to infuse this with AI, right? That's a requirement. We know who the persona is. The added feature is we want to add AI somewhere, something. So design looks at this and says, okay, maybe these are 4, but we had like 7 or 8 ways that we can infuse design, add a button, add some interaction, add the feature of AI into this. Is it on the top left with a drop-down menu? Is it in the top right with a smaller icon that has a pop-up? Is it a big window over under the expression? Or is it, like, where is it? So we go out there and do designs and explore all these different options. We review it with the design team. We review it with PM and engineering. We review in kitchens that we do with our end users. And we ended up with this. We said, okay, we reviewed 5, 6, 7 options. We're going to put it in the right panel. But the right panel already has expressions and other stuff. So, okay, so now we need a new tab at the top. So at the top series is the functions tab that already exists. Let's introduce a new tab called AI. You click on it. And then these are the specs initial specs that we sent to engineering. And the idea here is, the advantage is now that we have a vertical space where we can talk to the AI and get back and forth and see the entire history of what's going on, where all the other options that we had did not give us that advantage, right? So it's a pros and cons thing for every design option that we have. And at the end, we settled on this. Again, go back to the triad. So what can engineering do? What does PM want? What does design want? And this is the compromise that we ended up with, where everybody was compromising a bit, but everybody got what they wanted. So you'll see this in the product quite soon. Second one I want to talk about very briefly is, this is the UI for Apple School Manager. So Apple School Manager is powered by Connect, the technology in Connect, but we had to build new UIs inside Apple School Manager to get schools to integrate their SISs, school information systems, with Apple devices. So this is what the software does. And this specific feature is, how do you log in? And I'll show you a bit. But I wanted to just highlight what the UX designer goes through. So UX designer is trying to figure out, there's how many teams? Like 8 teams over there. So the UX designer is running through all of these teams with the design options and seeing how can we coordinate across all these teams so every team gets what they want, and then we get to a good place. So in this case, Claris, Apple, it was 6 months, and we have all those teams giving feedback on the designs. Here's one example. This is inside Sketch. I think what's important is that people look at this screen and say, oh, it's only 4 buttons. What's the big deal, right? There's sign up with Google, sign up with Apple ID, and it's done. Why does it take 6 months? Well, here's one flow. So hundreds of screens here, trying to figure out, with all 8 teams, what is the flow that is ideal. This is just an example. We had 6 of these documents, so thousands of screens and flows, so that all 8 teams agree that, yeah, you start somewhere here, and you sign up, and you get your stuff connected. This is an extreme example, but I just want to give you a sense of what a UX designer does and how complex their world is. So if you go back to my explanation to my daughter, UX designer is, if you pick any of these screens, that line, how do I get to that screen? How do I get out of that screen? And what did I do in that screen? For each one of these. 6 months, thousands of screens. It's done. It's awesome. It's wonderful. It's success. I love it. So let's switch gears to visual design. So the second role, so visual designer, slightly different. So now visual designer is really heavy into the Adobe suite, right? So Photoshop, Illustrator. Now we're creating icons. We need pixel perfections. We need vectors. Images and brand logos all happen inside our Illustrator and Photoshop programs. And then Sketch, well, now visual designer is getting designs and final wireframes from the UX designer, and they're applying the design system onto those wireframes, right? So we're creating, again, pixel polish, pixel perfect designs with prototyping, and then we use the same thing. We hand over to engineering through GitHub, and I'll show you an example of that. But for that, here is the before and after of our login screen. And this is in Connect, in Studio. So left-hand side, PM came to us and said, okay, now it's time to focus on the sign-in screen, right? It doesn't look that good, and that's the end result. So this is the visual design. This is the effect of a visual designer on the product. How do we do this? So the first step is we go do some research, right? So this is brainstorming. This is understanding what the market is, what the trends are across the industry, our competitors, Apple, everybody. What is a login experience today? What does it look like? And what are the standards that are being used today? So yeah, hundreds. So this is just one screen, but for each one of these, we're mapping the entire flow, right? We're not just taking a screenshot of the login screen, but just to get a sense of it. Next, we say, okay, we identify best practices for that, and then we start applying our own brand into the design, right? So we know that we have the left-hand side, we decided to have that moment of surprise and delight and have that image that you're gonna see right now on the left that connects the product to our marketing website, to our brand. These are 6, 7 options with flows. Again, whenever you see these lines, they're flows. You click, you go to the next screen. In exploring 6, 7 different options, sharing them with PM, with engineering, with stakeholders, with users, and getting to a good solution. And this is the solution that we ended up with on the left-hand side. And then the prototype of, you see a login screen, but it's maybe 10, 15 screens, right? There are error states, there's sign up, there's sign in, there's forgot password and all that kind of stuff. Then we break that down into design system components, right? Once we know what the design is, what are the details? I mean, here's an example that the left-hand image that we have, we wanted that to change every day. So it's not always this exact same image. So then the visual design would be providing that to engineering with some specs on how it behaves and what that design is. It's just a nice way to make it different every time you log in. Here's what we hand off to engineering. So this is the output of Sketch into a clickable prototype that goes into GitHub. And as you can see here, engineering is not guessing what the measurements are, what the spacing is, at the right-hand side there, you can see the colors, everything to do with that. Each element on that screen is crystal clear, as you can see. On the left-hand side, we have all the pages that we talked about, from sign in to sign up to forget password. And the engineer can just go hover over any of these items and see what the specs are, right? So there's not a lot of back and forth. There's not a lot of Jira tickets. There is, yeah, that's 320 by, and you follow the whole thing, right? And this is the end result in dark mode and light mode. Oh, we do everything twice because now we need it in dark mode and light mode. Awesome. I'll quickly go through this. So this is another example of visual design. Now we're looking at FileMaker. So this is FileMaker on the Mac. And we have a project that Juliana mentioned in the keynote where we're refreshing the look and feel of FileMaker, right? So what you see here is you're on the Mac, you've launched FileMaker, and you're logging into cloud, right? So we need to redesign the cloud as well. So that's also very close to the sign-in page that you saw in Studio. So kind of continuing the same look and feel across our platform. That's our aim at the end of the day, is to get a cohesive experience across all our platforms. So this is your new launch center. We're not taking away any functionality. We're just refreshing the design to be closer to the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, specifications, and that the app that lives on the Mac feels more comfortable, I guess, with other Apple apps. So I think this is the launch center. All these colors, these icons, the style is the same as you would see in Studio. So soon enough, we'll have Studio and FileMaker look and feel the same, again, towards having one unified platform. This is, this is the Chrome UI in FileMaker. So again, if you look closely, we're not taking anything away from you, right? But for sure, this looks a bit more modern, looks more Apple-esque, for lack of a better word. But what we've done, for example, just one comment, the toolbar at the top there, our existing FileMaker today, the top toolbar is all one component. So you can't customize what you want inside that, at that toolbar. In the new redesign, we're splitting up all these controls into single controls. So then you can do right click, and then you can customize your toolbar to say, well, I only want, buttons and whatever you want, and I don't want to see the rest. You can hide the rest. So as we do a visual update of FileMaker, we're also going to be infusing more functionality, not taking anything away, but making it a better experience for the developer, right? On the right-hand side, you can see this is your properties panel. What we've changed there is fonts, padding, colors, spacing, just to make it feel a bit more modern as phase one. And then in phase 2 and 3, we'll be starting to add more functionality and making it even more useful for our customers. All right, so that's the end of the design team. So the question to you is, well, okay, this is awesome, Gabe, but what if I have limited resources and I have limited time? I can't hire 10 designers and I don't have that luxury. What do we do? So you do what I think you should do is a 5-day design sprint. Could be 3 days if you want, could be 2 weeks if you want, but I'm gonna go through this and give you tips and tricks that I've learned over time on how I can get the best value of design and PM and engineering, the triad that we talked about, through a workshop. I've done this maybe, 50 times in my life at this point. So what do you want? What do you need? What are the ingredients? So we're going to get a few people in a room for 5 days. What do you want? First is you need a way to do rapid design, right? So you need to either have a design system that's ready, where you can just throw things on a screen, and so you're not designing everything from scratch every single time. Or you can use FileMaker and maybe Studio. If you're very quick, very rapid, you can quickly create screens in FileMaker. Use that. I don't care. Just find a way to use rapid design, because it's going to come very crucial in the next step. The next thing you want is a triad that we talked about. You need representation from design, from PM, from engineering. And if you can get a facilitator, that'd be awesome. It'd be a nice ad, but I'm trying to make this as cost-effective as possible. And then you need the end user, right? There's no substituting the end user. We need the end user in the room with us for 5 days. Now, it could be one user, it could be 5 users, whatever it is, whatever your persona is, whatever your use case is, but there's no substitute. You think you know what they need, but you actually need them in the room to talk to them, to understand what they want, what their pain points are. So now that we get all these people in the room for 5 days, what's the process? The process is 3 steps, right? First is discover. We're trying to understand what the problem is, what the right problem to solve is. Really empathy. Trying to understand the user and see what they want. What's the ultimate journey that they want to go on to solve the problem that we're trying to solve. Next is ideate. So now we're translating those requirements or those needs into wireframes and designs. And of course, the last one is build. I'm going to go through all of them. But before I do, I just want to, this is very important. This is how many times you want to iterate in each of these steps. So the idea is, in discover, keep iterating, keep changing. Change it. If you change it 15 times, then in build, you just need to change it once or twice. So every time we go from one stage to the next, we want less and less iteration. And the reason is a mistake that you do in discover that costs you $100 costs you $100 in the build stage. It's very expensive to fix mistakes once the code is written and once the app is out. It's very cheap to fix a mistake in the discover stage. Right? So this is very important to understand as I go deeper into this. How do we do this usually? Discover usually takes a day, right? Ideate takes 2 days. Build takes about 2 days. I'll go through it now. It doesn't have to be a day, but this is the ratio of what you need, right? And by day, I mean like 8 hours, 6 hours, right? Not 1 hour. So let's go into discover. Discover, we're trying to do 2 things. What is the right problem to solve? Because everybody comes in the room thinking that they have a solution, thinking what the problem is, but each one has a different idea. And here, we're trying to all align what is the problem we're trying to solve here. What is it that we're trying to solve? And once we establish that, that's going to take 2 hours of just talking, everybody in the room. Next is, what's the best case scenario? What's your solution? What is the day in the life of this user using this solution to solve their problem? We're not worried about limitations. We're not talking about what can't be done. We're talking about, in the best case scenario, what does that journey look like? And how are we successful at the end of day 1? Is you have a golden thread. What is a golden thread? Golden thread is basically a text document, just text, of 10 bullet points that describe this journey. That's all it is. Can everybody in the room agree that these are the 10 things that I need to do to solve the problem I'm trying to solve? Yes or no? You think it's easy. It takes 8 hours of back and forth. And there's no tools, there's nothing special. We're just talking. And every time we delete the whiteboard, write it again, make edits, make changes, and we don't move to the next day until everybody agrees that this is the ultimate path, the golden path, the happy path. We're not worried about edge cases. We're worried about what we focus on is, in the best case scenario, what am I doing? Describe it in words to get to what I want to do. What is the solution in written format? Very simple. Can't be that difficult. But everybody needs to align. Everybody, the user, the PM, the engineer, the designer, but really the user is what we're interviewing here. And there are many, I'll share with you a few books about ways you can get this out of the user. There are many different ways. I'm not going to talk about ways of doing it. You can use sticky notes. There are many ways you can do it, methods of doing it. But the idea is that we agree. Once that's done, we move to day 2. We go home, we relax, we come next day, we start again. Now, what we want to do is translate those 10 points, that golden path, that golden thread, into wireframes. What that gives us are the main screens that we need to do, that we work on in that golden path. Is it 5 screens? Is it 10 screens? Is it 20? What is it? How are now we're starting to get into design, right? First day, there's no design. Now we're starting to translate that story into wireframes. We go back, we show it to the user. Yes, no, agree, no, agree. Yeah, what doesn't work? Go back, fix it, and show it again. So the user might be sitting, taking a break for an hour. The design team's in another room. We're doing another round of wireframes. We come back, we show it to the user. Yes, no, yeah. We're not moving to the next stage until the user says, these wireframes equal the golden thread. So it's very close collaboration so that we minimize any tangents that might happen. We're not going to assume anything. Anything that we do needs to be okayed by the user or the users or the persona in the room. Once that's done, we start translating into visual design. And as you notice, every time we're moving through this, it's getting more and more expensive to fix any mistakes. So that's why we need approvals before we go through every stage. 2-3 days, whatever it takes to get there. And we need a clickable prototype to be signed off by the user. This clickable prototype could be just wireframes. Doesn't have to be too fancy. It'd be nice if you can apply your design system that we talked about earlier now. Be great, but not a requirement. But I want them to be able to click through sketches and say, yeah, if you can build this for me, I'm super happy. That's it. I'll pay for this. Whatever. This is what we want. Third day is we start building. Right? So now we have a golden thread. We know what the user wants. We have a clickable prototype that's kind of a target design of where we want to go, rough wireframes. The engineer here now starts to say, okay, these wireframes, these 2-3 screens, yeah, we can do these with our design system or what we have. But that third screen, that's custom code. That's going to take more time. So now engineering is coming in and saying, okay, these 15 screens, here's my estimate for each one of these and how it's going to take, how long is it going to take, how complex is it, what do we have already in our back pocket that we can deploy, and what is seriously more effort, right? PM are looking at these and saying, okay, here are the priorities of what we want all this to, how we want this all to be done, and breaking it down into Jira tickets or whatever, just more detail. But it's not out of thin air. We have a clickable prototype. And design is taking that prototype and doing external testing, right? So they're going outside the building, and they're validating with another 3, 4, 5, 6 users to make sure, before engineering starts to build, outside the building, we're good to go. This is what we want. We all agree that this is the best thing that we want to do, and this is the path we want to take. And they come back, and we can iterate as well. So at the end of it, we have a target experience that everybody agrees we need to hit. Now it's a matter of how fast we can get there and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is, at the end of these 3 days, 5 days, whatever you want to call it, the process, we get a target design that we all agree upon. I have one more slide, and then we can do Q&A. These are the books that you need to read. If any of this is interesting and you like it, these are the ones you want. So first one, Sprint in 5 days, talks a bit deeper. Each book has a slightly different flavor of what I just talked about today, but it's kind of It's kind of known. So that's an awesome book that I recommend that you read. Lean UX gets more into the details of day-to-day building software and how does Agile and Scrum and design all kind of come together in the role of design in that. The third one, design thinking, is how do you facilitate the workshop that we talked about, right? What are the methods? Plenty of different ways you can do this. They're all listed in that book. It's a fantastic book. So usually you get a facilitator that can help you do that, or a designer can step in and also do that, because it's very similar to a design process that we do. And the last book is What CEOs Need to Know About Design. It talks at a very high level why design is important and the impact of design on business. Kind of a bit similar to what I talked about earlier in the talk about the triad and the value of design. So all these together make a great combo. And I'm going to leave you with one more video, and then we'll do Q&A. There should be audio, but we don't have audio. It's an old video, but I love it. There's something about it that I really, really like. So thank you. Reminder again. Thank you. Please come grab me. I'm on the fifth floor to the end of the day. If you want to talk about design, I'd love to. If you have any questions about this session, please come ask me. And please, please rate the session. Thank you. Q&A, anyone? We have time, so thought.
I was surprised. Oh, okay. I was wondering why the testing of the clickable wireframe without more than just your proxy user or small user group was considered part of build.
Yeah, so I've seen it done in the second part, but I think the idea is that at that stage, we're pretty confident that this is what we want to build, and we're testing it just to make sure there are no small issues or concerns that may come up. So we're not going to do major changes. It's more fine-tuning, just kind of one last check, so to speak, that happens in parallel to what engineering and PM are doing, but it's not going to affect what we agreed upon in a fundamental way. It's just one more validation. And you can do it in the second stage if you want. That also works. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
First off, I love the deck. Big stickler for decks looks, all of that. So my question is around Claris is like really doubling down on efforts around AI, and obviously we saw stuff around like the development aspect of stuff, right? And so my question is largely around like the design stuff. We want to make things faster, more efficient, yada yada yada, right? And so in what ways will AI be utilized from a design aspect to get better design outcomes if you don't want to read 1,000 different books on UX and whatnot?
Yes. Okay. So the question for everybody else, what's the effect of AI on design? And I think we had that discussion last night. Yeah, great question. So let me just say this. AI is not going to replace design, is my view. What it's going to do is if you're an A-player designer, it's going to make you a superhero. You're going to have abilities that are unbelievable. If you're a B player, C player, yeah, there's a problem there. So I think it's going to make the divide between awesome designers and okay designers even more. I mean, I gave an example yesterday as well. Like if you look at the keynote that we made yesterday, if you guys attended the keynote, there's a lot of design stuff that happened in that keynote that a year ago would have cost us much more money and much more time to do. So AI, we used AI to reduce that time so that we can get to a great product in a much faster way. So it's kind of it's an extra tool on steroids that can help a designer be even better. Can an AI run a design thinking workshop? Not yet. I don't think. I think the human touch and the intuitive nature of what we do and the communication and the brainstorming that happens is still a very human thing. So I'm not too worried about about AI right now. But I don't know. We can check in a year and see.
That's fair. I guess, like, will there ever be a point, perhaps, like, within, like, your own solution where you'd be able to ask it, like, hey, based on what you see, do you see any room for improvement on the UX side of things, or is it really...
Correct. So there are tools already out there where you can say, here's my design, make it better from a UX perspective. It tries, but it doesn't get it because it can't validate with the end user. It's making assumptions based on what's on the training data that it has, but you're trying to create a solution for this specific user in the room, and it's right now it is hard, but yeah, maybe it's going to take all my job. I don't know. Any other question? Yes.
Do you have any design system available for the public?
Do we have a design system available for the public? No, we do not. Yes?
They might be developer.apple.com. Like there are toolkits in there to help you to design templates start on standards on the Mac, iOS, and things like that. So that is out there in the public.
Correct. There are design systems in general that you can use, Apple being one of them. But if you're asking about stuff that you use in FileMaker, the closest thing we have is a theme, would be one way of doing it. But then you have to create it from scratch. We ship a few themes, and I'm not, ashamed to say that we can do a better job with our themes. So maybe that's on my to-do list. He can help. And then in Studio, we actually, since it's web-based, we utilized a design system called Ant-D. Ant-D. It's an open source design system, very robust, and it's built for enterprise solutions. So it's very complicated and has a lot of stuff in it. Free, you can download it and you can use it. That's what we're using for Studio as a base. And then on top of that, we can make changes to the controls. But for the design that we don't publish those. So the closest thing would be a FileMaker theme. Would be, yeah, the closest. Yep. Yes.
So from a design perspective in software, how does Claris maintain the difference between the Mac OS experience and a Windows experience?
Eric just asked us a very, very tough question. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer there is. His question is, how do you get parity between the Mac and the Windows versions of FileMaker? And I think my viewpoint is that for every platform, you should design the experience for that platform because the user on that platform is used to certain elements, certain style, certain way of behavior, and we should get as close as possible to that. So I guess the underlying operating system should affect the end, but I don't have a clear answer for you right now. Yeah, we're starting with the Mac, but we'll see where we...
Like if Apple had like a human interface guidelines, is there something similar on the Windows side?
Oh, no, Windows does not have a... Correct. But I think what's important to also understand the HIG, the Apple Human Interface Guidelines, is very focused on a B2C consumer, right? In our world, we're a B2B. We're even a B2B2B, right? To C. So the HIG gives you a good start, but it does not cover all the use cases that we need. It doesn't have, for example, complex tables, complex analytics that you can use. It's very much a B2C experience, so much simplified, but it's a good starting point. So we use that as a base, and then we take it from there. But I don't think Windows has an equivalent. Maybe I'm wrong. Any other questions? We have 3 minutes. Yes?
I saw that you were using something like Sketch Measure for the prototyping
Yeah.
of Sketch. Is that something that's keeping up with the updates to Sketch itself? Or are you finding yourself like making updates to your own version of Sketch Measure to keep up with the feature set, like calling out modal windows and things like that Sketch is introducing?
So the question is, from Sketch that I showed you, the clickable prototype, we use a plugin to export those artboards and what we're doing in Sketch to make it an HTML folder that you can click through. That's the question. So far, I mean, we don't have any issues that I know of, but we can maybe chat with Jason after. He will have even more details on that. But so far, it hasn't been a limitation for us. Sometimes there's a gap between you get this update and you have to wait a bit until you get that. But so far, yeah. But so far, we're not limited by it. It seems to work pretty fine.
Is there a way to build that prototype where you have now you can get the CSS or the Android code and things like that, but is there any way to give it like FileMaker theme?
Oh, jeez.
So I know it's
So the question,
from Sketch.
correct. So the question is, how do you get from any design software into FileMaker layouts the quickest way? Sketch does not have an answer, but that's not the first time this comes up. So we're looking into some way we can utilize and maybe streamline that. So it's on my personal to-do list, whether it's Sketch or Figma or any other design software. The question, my point of view, not necessarily Claris, my point of view is there's no point of FileMaker being a full design software. That's not what FileMaker is. So how about we offload that to a professional design software and then get FileMaker to do what it does best that those guys can't do, and then how do we create that bridge, translation layer, plugin, whatever it is. I agree with what you're saying. I don't know how feasible that is, but it's worth exploring in the labs, for sure. Yes, it's on our radar. Awesome. Thank you so much for attending. Come find me.